Thank you. Do we have anyone on the telephone lines?
See what it looks like in 4 years. I don't know.
No. Okay.
Good trust.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regular meeting, October the 10th, 2018. And I'll ask us to stand for the singing of O Canada. Director, I'll ask you to do roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our meeting of 10 October 2018. Trustee Armour.
Present.
First Vice Chair Karkner.
Present.
Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Here.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
She's got no candidates tonight.
Student Trustee Bushra Kadra. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have quorum.
I thank you very much, Director. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda item 3.02 to 3.03, October the 10th, 2018, as submitted. Moved by Trustee Karkner, seconded by Trustee Bill McPherson. I'll ask you to cast your votes, please.
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor also. Sorry.
No, that's no problem. We're just getting these up. Trustee Karkner, and seconded by Trustee Bill McPherson. We'll just take our time on this first one here, just to get it going. Okay, just I don't have it on my screen. A show of hands. Thank you very much. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing there are none, we're going to move forward to a report to the board from private session. This is a report to the board from the private session September 26, 2018. At its committee of the whole meeting in private session September 26, 2018, one property, one legal and three personnel matters were discussed. One recommendation is brought forward to the board. So I need a mover and a seconder that the Upper Canada District School Board approve resolution number PS 2018 September 26-002, carried in the committee of the whole private session under agenda item D.1, September 26, 2018. A mover and a seconder for that. Trustee John McAllister, and seconded by Trustee Cram. I'll ask you to cast your votes, please. Trustee Armour? You're in. Good. That carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to the first item on the agenda with delegations and presentations. We're going to have Superintendent Jody Barrett, who is going to introduce two others to help us with the Board Achievement Plan for Indigenous Education. I'll turn this over to Superintendent Jody Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to invite Gail Brandt-Terry, our Indigenous Education Principal, and Bill Montgomery, our Indigenous Education Lead.
Welcome.
So we begin this report, first maybe by having the clicker. We begin this report by acknowledging the traditional territories upon which our students and staff gather each day. For thousands of years, the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people have sought to walk gently on this land to learn, to teach, and to play. I'm going to see if I can make this actually work. So the Indigenous Education Strategy is designed to improve opportunities for our Indigenous students, to increase the knowledge and awareness for all of our students about Indigenous histories, cultures, and perspectives. It serves to close gaps and remove barriers for our Indigenous students, support Indigenous culture, and build our reconciliation literacy. It creates opportunities to collaborate with our Indigenous partners, to lead by example and take active steps to apply the model of reconciliation within our Upper Canada District School Board. We're very proud of the work with regards to the Indigenous Education Strategy, and we continue to advance the goals within our district to improve student achievement and well-being among our self-identified Indigenous students and to close the achievement gap. This year, we have 674 self-identified students within our district. We have much to be proud of in the work of fulfilling the key ministry commitments with our strategy. The plan this year is continuing to build upon the shared vision and has been developed collaboratively with the Directors Advisory Circle, in which we gather our student and system feedback to support the creation of the plan. So it's collaborative, it's shared by many, which gives us a strong district-wide focus for supporting Indigenous education. As we reported to the board in the spring of our past school year, we reached out to our student population and asked our students about those elements that were important to them in ensuring that our Indigenous student voices were heard. Part of the creation of the plan was involving that information in terms of including it within our data set. For the Indigenous Education Action Plan, the ministry provides us with 4 key areas of focus that we'll be sharing with you this evening. First off, we use the data to support student achievement. We're supporting our students, we're supporting educators, and then we also focus on engagement and awareness building within the system. So in the creation of the plan, we utilize the self-identified student data and our achievement data linked to our school improvement planning processes, and which are connected with creating engaging learning experiences as well as a focus on assessment and evaluation. Our data is tracked in our school improvement plans, and we utilize for our Indigenous students as well as all of our students within the system a learning team approach to support student success. We continue to promote the connection of our community links as well as the depth of our Indigenous self-identification program within the system. So all of this information serves to help build the board action plan supporting Indigenous education. And I'll just turn it over to Mr. Montgomery.
Thank you. For the students, we're continuing with several of our initiatives and beginning a few more. This year, we're continuing with our TRC plus 4. There are 16 schools taking part in it. What we're doing at the beginning I'll be visiting all the schools to present to the grade 5, 6 classes the blanket exercise, which is a exercise that which gives a further understanding to the relationships that were developed in the history of our the Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada. It's a great starting point for our learners. I'll also be meeting with the teachers from grade 1 through to 6 for those 16 schools in the afternoon to provide them with resources and have them continue to work on projects throughout the year to showcase at our gathering at the end. Many of you had the opportunity to see that last year. We're very pleased with the work that our students had done. We'll also be incorporating a couple of feasts so that we get to know our families, our self-ID'd families, and encourage them to attend at the end of the year as well. We'll also be providing resources for, we had the social studies, geography, and history rollout last year, and we'll be providing resources for our teachers to help with the understanding for our students there as well. At the high school, we're again focusing on our iLead group, our Indigenous Leadership Program. Our first gathering is tomorrow, in which we have over 180 students registered. Considering that when we first started, 2012 I believe it was, we had less than 120 self-ID'd students period throughout the board. We now have just 180 high school students joining our group, and as Jody had mentioned, 674 throughout. What we'd like to do to encourage the teachings be spread out throughout, we'll be recording our gatherings. For example, tomorrow we have David Jock and Francis DeRoche giving some Haudenosaunee cultural teachings. We'll be recording that and making it available to both elementary and high school teachers to present in their classrooms. We want to further promote our student voice. Our Senate representative this year, Alison McIntyre from Russell, her teacher is one of our go-to people. One of our teachers has been in our Indigenous Studies classes for a while. We want to give her the opportunity to present something for our iLead gatherings. I've spoken with her and said if you would like to have a half hour, 45 minutes, that's something that you believe that the students, the iLead students would like to do, whether it's looking at a video, taking part in an activity, her choice. She decides part of the day and what to do. Taking it a bit further, we've always asked our students to invite their allies. To be very honest with you, there's been very few that have attended. The reasoning probably, just guessing, I really don't know, but whether they remember to ask their friends or whether they're not ready to have them join. We want to encourage that by having our student Senate representatives from all our schools attend our iLead gatherings as well. Our intent is this year to have them involved in a couple of presentations to do with treaties and reconciliation. We've asked Mr. Jacobs to provide information on our tuition agreement with AMBI. Our students understand that there are students from Akwesasne, but they really don't know what that means or entails. So we like Mr. Jacobs to explain that a little bit. Also have teachings on treaties and wampum belts. We'd then like to have those student Senate representatives create a commitment to reconciliation belt, a commitment from our non-Indigenous students towards our Indigenous students. We'll give them the two meetings, the first meetings they provided with the teachings. The second gathering when they return, we'll ask them that they create a design for a wampum-style belt as a commitment to our Indigenous students. We'll then showcase that and introduce it at our TRC +4 gathering at the end of the year. A couple other initiatives that we're hoping to do. Mr. Hardy, Eric Hardy, who is one of our assistant principals, has had success with the Dragon's Den Entrepreneurship Award. We want to pilot that with our Akwesasne students or Cornwall students and make that an Indigenous a pilot for our iLead group next year. This year we're just starting it with our Cornwall students. Also, a couple of things that we're looking at, providing credits for banking credits for both our iLead itself. Hopefully after 4 years our students will be able to achieve a credit or a half credit for attending our gatherings. Also through our Algonquin language to see if it's possible to get a credit for our Algonquin language provided at Perth as well.
So how are we supporting our educators? Well, to begin with, every professional learning opportunity that our educators will be engaged in this year will be in alignment with the system team's vision of that we prepare all students for a successful life by creating engaging learning experiences and improving assessment and feedback practices. So we're striving to build capacity in Indigenous pedagogy and reconciliation literacy across all of our professional learning this year. To support our educators, we're going to be providing their professional development through an Indigenous learning model, which contains 4 components: visioning, feeling, understanding, and doing. We begin with visioning when you're looking at the big ideas and you have lots of questions and lots of wonderings, and this supports you in getting to know your students better. As you move into the feeling, you're relating, you're investing, and you're creating those conditions for students to be successful. And you're staying in the feeling because you're feeling compelled to learn, and here you're really teaching to the heart. As you move into understanding, you're building that shared understanding, and you're making connections that help to inspire empathy. And finally, you move into the acting, and where you are sharing, you're communicating, you're creating, you're extending, and you're contributing. And in the model, you are constantly weaving back and forth into the feeling component because you want to keep the mind and the heart connected. Also, through our professional learning, we're going to be exploring Director Sliwa's, you're a doctor now, Mr. Sliwa, approach to reconciliation literacy. And he refers to that as being the 4th R, and that includes care and conversation and curiosity and courage. And it really aligns nicely with our approach with the Indigenous learning model. So this year, some of the engaging learning experiences that we're going to be providing to the educators will include a variety of responsive approaches. We'll be having face-to-face experiences, and that will include some educator networks for understanding contemporary First Nation, Métis, and Inuit voices for our grade 11 English, our TRC plus 4 grade 5-6 educators, and we're going to be continuing on with the Inuit Math Inquiry. We'll also be providing more training for social studies, history, curriculum revisions, and we're going to be providing First Nation, Métis, and Inuit cultural competency training to interested educators. We'll also have lots of opportunities for our educators to continue to learn alongside their students. We will continue to have elders and knowledge keepers in the classrooms and at our iLeads days. And we're going to also have some system and some classroom Skype opportunities with elders and knowledge keepers. And with their permission, we'll be videotaping these and we'll archive them in our virtual learning commons. We're also going to be providing some virtual learning opportunities for our educators as well. They're going to be invited to participate in an online professional book club, and we're going to begin with the book that's called Speaking Our Truth. We'll also be hosting some educator discussion groups, and again, these will both be housed on the VLC, and educators will be able to engage in sharing their wonderings and support each other in their learning journey. So we really recognize that Indigenous education is a really personal journey that you're on, but it can only be done when it's done in relationship with others. And it has to require trust and caring, intentionality, and lots of time. So our approach with Indigenous education and supporting our educators is going to be driven by purpose and alignment and coherence in our board. Miawangoa.
So just to also add, you can see from the depth of the support that we're providing for students and educators. It's also imperative that we are connecting with our communities, and all of the understanding that we have in our work in truth and reconciliation is involving our knowledge keepers, our Indigenous elders, building on the community feasts, and learning together. So we are really pleased with the opportunity to present our work this evening, and welcome any questions that you may have for us.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open it up to comments or questions. Trustee McAllister.
This is a relatively new program, and one which you are trying to grow very well. And with any new program, one of the issues always is resources, whether it be reconciliation or student achievement or culture. Is there a shortage of resources, or is there an abundance of them? And are there any impediments in your way?
So through you, Chair, we are very fortunate with the Indigenous education funding that currently comes from the province, that we have been able to allocate in keeping with our CREW model in Upper Canada, funds to support the purchase of resources, and that's been over the last several years. And we've aligned that with the areas of focus for the TRC events each year, which has created more access for our students, particularly in those schools, to have Indigenous texts as well as representation for students to see themselves right within the classroom program. The other area that we've had an opportunity to create depth in terms of resources specifically would be the Contemporary Aboriginal Voices for our grade 11 English program, which is currently in every one of our secondary schools in Upper Canada, and we're very proud of that step that we've taken as a district. So that is also another area when we ask our schools to run specific courses that we want to ensure that those resources are there to be able to support both our educators and students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Trustee Bill McPherson.
Is this extended to, well, basically, do you share this story with all students? Like, is this a program that is offered to all students or strictly to self-identified students?
Through you, Chair. The Indigenous Studies courses themselves are offered for all students. It's, I would say, a very small percentage of the students actually taking the courses are Indigenous. The Indigenous Leadership Program itself, those 180 students that we're expecting tomorrow are all First Nations, Métis, or Inuit. We do want them to bring their friends. We want to include their inner circles and create that trust within their own communities. That's a process, and that's one of the reasons why we're hoping to get the Student Senate involved to act as a liaison between our Indigenous students and our non-Indigenous.
Thank you. Trustee McAllister.
Gail, I think it was you, when you were speaking about professional development, you referenced the Indigenous model. Mm-hmm. Could you elaborate on that, please?
So it's an Indigenous way of knowing and being, and how education has always been done, and it's taught through the heart, right? So you want to get people into the feeling phase and understand why it is that they're learning something, so that they're connected and they're engaged in the learning. So this is a model that will really support our approach to those engaging learning experiences, so that it stays with you. So you're teaching to the heart and to the mind.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing there are none, thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next item. This is coming from Trustee Jeremy Armour and our Director, and this is the Upper Canada District School Board Parent Involvement Committee Annual Update to the Board. So I'll turn this over to the Director first, and then Trustee Armour.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this evening it's our pleasure to bring forward to you the annual report for the Parent Involvement Committee. The regulation that gives guidance and direction to the Parent Involvement Committee for all district school boards in Ontario requires that there's an annual report submitted by the Parent Involvement Committee each year, and it's to the board's tribute that not only have they received the report, but they're choosing to have it brought forward to their public discussion, public session dialogue. And maybe I'll just see if I can we can move the next slide over. Our PIC membership, and we'll use the acronym PIC for Parent Involvement Committee, is made up of a variety of people. This is all, again, described in the provincial regulation. Obviously, we want parents who are on the Parent Involvement Committee. The director or the director's designate is expected to be there. There is a trustee representative, who's Trustee Armour. And we also have two principal representatives there, an elementary and a secondary principal. as well as a need to reach out to have a ancillary support through other parents if available, and a community rep. I do want to make sure that I give a plug for, on this particular slide, from the co-chairs of the Parent Involvement Committee, that their recruitment drive is always ongoing. They always welcome new members to the Parent Involvement Committee, given how wide and large our school district is. And there's a need to have representation from a variety of parents. When I say that, parents who have children in our elementary schools, those that have parents or have children in their secondary schools in our board, and then lastly, we do have an adult and continuing education commitment, and we have a very broadly defined view of parents, and would welcome parents who have members of their household in the adult and continuing education programs in our board as well. So this slide is very important because we would want to make sure that people who are watching this evening, and for the trustees themselves to know that if you know of parents who would be interested in serving in the committee, that if you please contact me or Trustee Armour, and we'll give them the co-chairs' coordinates and invite them to come to the next meeting. In our next slide, we talk a little bit about what's happened this course of this school year, and one of the primary purposes of the Parent Involvement Committee is to provide information and seek advice from parents about activities that happen in the school, or events or services that are part of the school board. Last fall, one of the key presentations that came to the PIC group was about transportation services. Members of the board will know that transportation services have changed a great deal in the last decade, from it being a service that was directly related to school boards, to being a service that became delegated to consortiums, and that those consortia then did the work that school boards used to do in terms of reaching out to bus operators and planning how that service would be delivered on behalf of the school boards that are party to the consortium. Of particular interest on that presentation was about inclement weather and route planning. And I think parents felt quite impressed by the measures that our consortium takes to determine whether or not it's safe to operate buses on the road when we have inclement weather, which is part of our Upper Canadian reality, of course. And secondly, about route planning and the intricacies about that, everything from the EduLog software that the STAO uses to how do they determine ride times and confirm accuracy. So the GPS technology that they have is really quite impressive. We also had other presentations as well, and that would be on the next slide. We have a focus on equity and inclusion in our school district. The parents really wanted to get a sense of, could they give some feedback to the board and to staff about how they see inclusivity and the board's commitment in its stance about all means all, which has been a big part of how our board sees delivering programs and services to children. I think it speaks well to the parents who were there that evening that they had different ideas and understandings from the different parts of our district, and they really did want to get a better understanding about how are we supporting young people who come to school with social emotional needs and some behavioral needs, and what does that mean in terms of taking a stance around inclusivity and equity. I do think that, and I do credit our staff who came to that presentation that day and gave the highlights about how we're approaching that in our school district. And I do appreciate, again, what the parents brought back to their school councils as members of the Parent Involvement Committee about what the board's been doing, how they've been investing resources, and what plans are in place to fulfill this commitment. Our very last slide in terms of the activity that took place last year was, we're a board of 12,000 square kilometers, 37 different local governments, and 4 large counties. Because of that, it was to PIC's credit that they decided to have an outreach strategy as a way of trying to go to different parts of the school district and meet and greet with school council chairs and school council representatives from these areas. The Rideau meeting on April 4th and the Elmont District High School seems to be kind of west heavy. What we don't have there is that we were also at the RO school in November, and that was also part of their outreach strategy as well. What they do hope is that by being localized in their meeting strategy, that they'll attract some new members and also develop a deeper understanding about how to promote school councils and what they're trying to do through the offices and resources of PIC. In the next slide, it speaks a bit more to two specific disbursements of funds that they had over the last year. All parent involvement committees had an opportunity to seek grants from the provincial government. And in their grant application, two things were drivers for our local PIC. One was a writer-in-residence model that attracted very positive attention from the Ministry of Education, including the minister herself, a few years back. And what was happening there was it was articles for parents written by a parent, and the parent happened to be also a professional writer. So those articles are posted on our website as well under the Parent Involvement Committee link. And two of those articles were published last year to commit and finalize the disbursement of those funds. The other focus for this past year is on the next slide, and that's about TUSC. In focusing on the social emotional learning focus that we have in our schools, the PIC committee some years ago, 3 years ago, we're looking at could we find some sort of mascot that children could relate to, and then to build a focus on our character values that the school board has around the acronym of teaching, unconditional support, and kindness. To show you that it really does resonate with our schools, we had a one-year birthday party for TUSC last year, and some folks around the table might recall our social media approach to that promotion. We were in Rockland Public School 2 weeks ago when the mascot that you see there, which was purchased by the PIC committee through their regional funds from the ministry, was, I guess, what would that be, a debut? Unleashed? What do we do with a mascot? I'm not too sure, but it was a first visit to any school, and the kindergarten class at Rockland Public School is named the Kindness Kindergarten, and so TUSC had a very special place there in that particular visit. We know that as well that through the efforts to coordinate this over the last few years, that different strategies are being used for using this focus, everything from, as I mentioned earlier, social emotional learning to immediate comfort. There are plush animals called TUSC at each of our sites, elementary and secondary, and as you might imagine, the elementary students have a bit more higher use of that. But it has been well received, and the key teachings that classroom teachers are using around our character values and connecting that with TUSC has been very popular. The very last slide, I believe, is how to promote in our current realities a connection in this very big school district that we're in, and the fact that we endeavor to keep an active website and a Facebook link as well speaks to the testament of our communications department, Superintendent Dawes and Ms. Scott Clark, again, to make sure that these are resources that are current. We do know that people get their information in different ways, and that's part of our challenge that we're hearing from the PIC group as well. and that is how to make sure that they're staying connected with individual school councils, and how that they can try to be a unifying force between different school councils in our 79 schools. I'll pause there, Mr. Chair, to turn it over to Trustee Armour to see if he has any comments as the board's representative on the PIC, and see if there's any questions following that.
Thank you, Director. Through you, Chair. So just a couple things to add. I've been sitting on PIC for the last 3.5 years. They are an advisory body to the school board. This is the first time they've actually presented here. And they provide information to us as a school board on parent engagement and ways to communicate with parents. Their mandate is to develop ways the board could use to help more parents support their children's learning at home and at school. And they provide information and support the work of individual school councils. So, with that being said, I'm going to plug membership, because we're lacking three spots, and so it's really important for the people that are listening out there to get involved so that we can help our kids, because this is what it's all about. So, if you know or you're interested, feel free to contact myself or the director, and we'll make sure we put you in contact with the right people. It is a fabulous organization, and the more people that are involved, the better things we can do for our kids. So I'll leave it at that.
Are you moonlighting as the Tusk Elephant? Just thought I'd ask. I'm going to open it up to comments or questions. Trustee Bill McPherson?
Thank you. More of a question, I guess. I share the sentiments of getting volunteers, being chair of SEAC as well, but I won't put in a plug right now. What kind of a time commitment are we talking about here? Daytime meetings, evening meetings, how many meetings a year? Just as a generality, so that I can maybe talk to a few parents in my neighborhood.
Trustee Armour, as the trustee, is sitting in on that.
How many meetings do we have?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, we have 4 meetings a year that are face-to-face, and we have also a online presence during the winter months. And by doing that, we don't, try to exhaust people's goodwill to try to put themselves in a tough drive for the meeting. Meetings are usually about 2 to 2.5 hours per session. And we do always give people the option, as we do here at this board table, for folks to dial in by teleconferencing if that enables them to balance, a long drive with being present in some way to contribute to the dialogue.
And then take place here?
I'm sorry?
They take place here?
No, we try to meet Mr. Chair centrally. We try in the Kempville area. Winchester was our most recent meeting area, just to try to maximize people's proximity to those meetings. But through the outreach meetings, we do go to different corners of the district for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on what Trustee Armour had said. So the mandate or the purpose of a PIC committee, as it relates to helping engagement in consulting or working with school councils. So I see a lot of information being shared with them, with the members of PIC, but I don't see anything that kind of molds into the mandate that they have about parent engagement feedback for us and the work that they're doing to support school councils. Do we have anything on that, or is there any initiatives that are underway?
Mr. Chair, through you, in those outreach meetings, folks will probably recall, Trustee Armour perhaps as well, as there was a big focus on how to engage in the parent reaching out grants, the pro-grants they're called, and to get a sense about how those grants developed a greater connection between schools and community and supporting children with their learning at home and at schools. Some of the approaches really do enhance or accentuate what we're trying to do as a school district. The focus on literacy and numeracy is very significant. Out in, I'll use one example, out in the Athens area, it's a multi-school approach that I know Trustee McAllister would be familiar with, which is working on physical fitness and self-care, bringing parents into the school with their children, and then making connections to what does that mean tomorrow when the kids are back at school. There's I think more work to do, I think, as a committee about how they can focus and provide feedback to the board. I think their first effort over the last several years was more about trying to connect with school councils and be a conduit for the conversations that school councils thought were important about how to give advice to principals as advisory groups at the school level, how to engage in grant writing that renders outcomes for schools that are successful, and probably a how-to as well about the lines between an advisory committee and what an advisory committee does and doesn't do, and sometimes that becomes a little tricky, as folks can imagine, in some schools.
Follow-up? Certainly.
If I may, then, yeah. So if that's been the focus, are we keeping track of that correspondence and the communication with school councils? There's a requirement that we would have minute and record keeping of the meetings, and I would hope that we were following up on any correspondence that we have with school councils. If that's the mandate, are we sending it on deaf ears? Are we sending it to the right people? Are we getting a loop back? As it appears that this committee has run somewhat isolation, and I see Tusk. It's great that we have an elephant, but I'm not certain how it connects into PIC. And I think there's an opportunity here for us, if the mandate is to make sure that we're bridging the gap with parent engagement in school councils. There's a lot more information that should be shared with us to make sure that we're working in collaboration.
Thank you. Trustee Kartner.
Just for some information purposes, one of the co-chairs is from my ward, and I invited her to the ward meeting that I had last year, and she came and gave a very in-depth description as to the role of PIC, and certainly went through a lot of the things that they can do for parent councils. So I don't know whether that's something that you're looking for coming to us as trustees, but I know that they're looking for that link between the parent councils themselves and with the board in some way. So I'm hoping that getting an annual report like this was just not only for information purposes, but to open that door for that to happen in the future, to get that feedback back from this council or this committee.
Thank you. Trustee Armour.
Just in response to those two comments between Trustee Kirkner and Trustee McDonald, we can take that back because there is definitely that. It's been 3 years. And so that's something, we need to bridge that gap. And so, yeah, there's definitely an area there that we can improve on. So I'll take that back.
And just a comment.
Yep.
I think there's an opportunity here. I think if PIC is to be that conduit, it's from my interpretation of it is the conduit between us and school councils, and helping communicate with parents. So I think there's an opportunity for us as a board to, as I said, work in collaboration to make sure that's happening, because oftentimes your school councils work with the principal, right? And there's a gap there. So I think there's an opportunity for us to work on that piece for sure.
Trustee McAllister.
Just to follow up on some things that have been said, I'm going to try and say it a different way. PIC is a sounding board for the board. So 2 questions. Does the board seek specific advice from PIC on certain topics? And the second question is, what is exactly the level of communication between PIC and school councils?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, for the first question about seeking advice, it's been our practice so far that when there has been requests for collecting of information that goes to the ministry, that all advisory groups would be contacted. So our CAC is one example of that, and PIC would be another, and our Student Senate has been another as well, not an advisory group, but been recognized by the Ministry of Education over the last few years as a focal point for some information that would be of some consequence. I don't know if I can say that in recent memory the board has asked staff to go directly to PIC to solicit views, but that is always a channel, and would be certainly happy to do that on behalf of the board if there was something that they would like to collect their very direct advice about. The PIC model and the regulation makes it very amenable to doing that. Sorry, the second question, Mr. Chair?
What is the actual level of communication between PIC and the school councils?
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Chair, through you, it is it's active. It depends on the school council and their interest in responding to PIC. We do have two channels. One is that we reach out through school principals and ask them to convey information that PIC is investing in. For example, we had a discussion about and collecting feedback about how staff could possibly shape some presentations to students about substance misuse. So that, as a channel, went through principals to school councils, and then school council chairs where we had the information to reach out to them. One of our largest challenges is that there isn't a direct conduit from PIC to school councils for two reasons. One is that PIC doesn't have its own domain to communicate that way, and that there is a kind of a revolving door around email addresses about school council chairs, and they change quite rapidly. Certainly every year they seem to have a great amount of change. And we spend a fair amount of time trying to collect that and also securing permission that we can be in contact with those folks with that information that they provided. But again, another area that PIC's very interested in improving on, and there are some options and possibilities that we can explore.
Trustee Carter?
Just to follow up to that, doesn't the PIC committee get asked about the school calendar for input as well?
Mr. Chair, through you, they would be one of the groups that we would be consulting as part of assembling the draft that we bring to board.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Just before we close this off, no. Trustee Bill McPherson?
I'm a little confused about the role of PIC. Part of my perceived role as a trustee is that I act as a conduit to my school councils. I make a specific request to attend every one of my school councils, usually at least once a year. I also make it quite clear that if they have an issue, they can either contact me by phone, email, or ask for my presence at their meetings. And I don't like to see a committee supersede the role of the trustee. Our role is precarious enough as it is. And I think there's value in PIC. They don't have the mandate that SEAC has. SEAC has a specific mandate. We are to review the spec ed plan. The board also has the power to review anything to send anything they want to SEAC for review. So I'm just a little concerned about the role that we're trying to define for PIC here. And that's strictly a comment, and so take it.
I think the role is clearly defined by the ministry. So it's not a role that we're defining. It's clearly outlined by the ministry what that role is. I'm sure it's open to challenge in terms of interpretation. But thank you for that comment. Just in closing this off, 8 years ago, I, along with Superintendent Coombs, watched PIC grow, and it was 2 members, and it was 2 members for a few years. So I can understand the need to get as many people involved as you can, because it's very difficult to get feedback from 2 people and classify them as an official committee, even though there was a lot of work put out there to get members to join into it. As Superintendent McDonald said, this is an opportunity. The opportunity can only be when the PIC committee is running on all its engines, and that requires membership. So again, that just to echo what everyone else is saying, it's important that if there are empty spots, representation across the board, that people bring their name forward and get out there. So I thank you very much, both of you gentlemen, for that report. Thank you. All right, moving on to the next. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Mills, and it's going to get Rob Currier to come forward, talk about Supervised Alternative Learning 2017 Annual Report to the Board. Hi, Rob.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Principal Rob Currier, who is now, as of September, at South Grenville District High School for the previous 3 years was the principal of Safe Schools. And it's our pleasure to bring you the Supervised Alternative Learning, or SAL, report for the 2017-2018 academic year. Just a little history or background information on SAL. The process was changed about 7 years ago to better meet the needs of our students. And the previous SAIL-UP model, or Supervised Alternative Learning for excused pupils, was broadened to allow for a little more creativity, and we'll expand on that in our brief presentation. The first 3 years our board did not engage in SAL, and in 2014-15 through a pilot with TR Leger in second semester we started it. And then 3 years after that, through the leadership of Mr. Currier and Trustee Don Cram, we're going to present to you where we are at now with SAL. Student success meetings are held in schools. Parents and guardians are very involved from the beginning. And the SAL committee reviews all applications that come to us before we decide on placement, with the goal to prepare all students for a successful life, which is our mission. So just as an introduction further, we're committed to providing learning opportunities for all students, and the goal is to get the OSSD, or Ontario Secondary School Diploma. It is for students aged 14 to 17, so at the beginning of their secondary school career in grade 9 up until about grade 11 age, and they would be having difficulty succeeding and may be offered alternative programs which are under the regulation you see there, 37410, which is SAL, and other excusals for attendance at school. And it goes along with the renewed goals with the ministry, achieving excellence. We want students to do well. It's an equity issue, for sure. Well-being and enhancing public confidence. We feel that, and we know that a successful SAL program is important in Upper Canada as we ensure there's a successful pathway for all students. So the intention of SAL, it's for a very small segment of the population, so we don't have a lot of students in SAL, and we'll expand on that. We want to re-engage students and keep them in their home school, not refer them to an alternative program outside. There are other examples that we will give you that we can use if a student is unsuccessful besides SAL. But while a student is in SAL, they can do credit or non-credit courses, so it's not necessarily credit that is the focus. Training and employment preparation, volunteering and employment, and counseling. So students follow a distinct learning plan, and they're monitored regularly by the committee monthly, and then we do a wrap-up at year's end. So the goal is we want to make a connection with the school and the student and the families. We want to progress to graduation, offer a program that is tailored to the student, and again, keep the student connected to their home school so that there's a smooth transition when they go back into regular mainstream. The SAL committee membership is myself, along with designate, which is Rob Currier, Trustee Don Cram, and we have a community representative, Annette Laringer, who works for the Guidance Project, so that we are making sure that our students, especially in the early years, grade 9, grade 10, you won't see any 14 or 15-year-olds per se up there in SAL, because we're trying to keep students engaged at the beginning of their high school careers. We have board support, special services counselors. We're working closely with agencies. And, in some cases, we do have students who go to TR Léger. So there are many different tools in our toolbox as educators, not just SAL. I did mention the committee earlier. So at a committee meeting, while it may look like there's just, the three of us, Trustee Cram, Mr. Courier, and I, and Annette, we will have either live or on a Skype call, because we're a large board geographically. The principal, vice principal, perhaps special services counselor, the parents, the student, and agencies. So while there might be 20 students that or so that have gone through SAL, you would have maybe upwards of 100 people on top of the committee who we spoke to throughout the year. Just in conclusion, I want to thank the committee. This is now a transition point, so this year, Superintendent Coombs has assumed responsibility for SAL, along with Principal of Student Success, Jeff Trasick. Trustee Cram will continue along with Annette Laringer, and I want to thank Trustee Cram and Rob Courier for all of your work to get where we are at in the last 3 years, I guess, of implementation. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and we'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I will open it up to comments or questions. Student Trustee Patty.
Through you, Chair, how are students recommended for SAL? Are teachers consulted, or principals, or?
Okay. Through you, Chair. So there's a long checklist that we have to, that's for before a SAL application is made, that the schools have to go to. So the SST should be involved, parents, guardians, teachers, principal, vice principals, SSC, all the supports in place to make sure that it's one of the last things that we're going to attempt. We try all kinds of different options, and one of the last things a school would attempt would be SAL.
Okay. Trustee Wendy McPherson.
I don't want to be nitpicky, but I was looking at your first cover page that goes with this here. You identified the boys and the girls. Why do we do that? Through you, Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's a good question, I guess, but we felt that maybe it was important to note whether it was male or female.
So there's no benefit to knowing or whether or not?
No.
Can we stop doing that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can take that under consideration for sure.
Thanks. Also have another question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. This is a financial one. Looking at the budget that we're coming into, is there any possibilities of having to curb some of the costs that are associated with SAL, and if so, how much do you think we would be losing or gaining or adjusting in the future budget?
So through you, Mr. Chair, there is at this point there is no added cost to the. We're using board resources that are currently funded. So it's system staff that are working. For example, special services counselors, principals, teachers, student success teachers, the committee members. There is no added cost in terms of salary or otherwise for the present SAL, the way it's operated.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee McAllister.
2 questions. One, is SAL an underused program or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Earlier I noted the number of programs and or other things that we can use as school and system staff. So for example, we have student success teachers in schools. We have guidance counselors in schools. We have special education and on all the other support staff in schools. And our main goal would be to make sure that students stay in their mainstream school. When students aren't successful, we might do credit rescue or credit recovery. We have board support services, including special services counselors and psychologists and psychometrists. We work closely with the outside agencies, and of course we do have special programs like TR Léger. SAL is one program. And I would say that some boards have used SAL as their solo alternative program or their main alternative program, because they don't have maybe a TR Léger and or are using all the other things we have in place. My colleague beside me who is responsible for student success, you saw a report last board meeting about the success we had with not only engaging students that are in mainstream now but are in the 5th-year cohort, and that was not on SAL. So our graduation rate has gone up 2% in the past year. The numbers may seem low, but we're not thinking that we're going out to recruit students to come into SAL. Schools are aware of that they can refer students, and they do if they see that it's necessary.
Okay, that's fine.
Second question, or you?
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? No, Trustee Cram?
Thanks, Chair. Just to add to that, for Trustee McAllister, most of the students that come through STEL, they are on built their last legs, if you want, and have had difficulty with attendance at school. As Superintendent Mills said, they've been through all of the programs in the schools already, the student services, the guidance counselor, the whole works. And this is their last attempt to get any credits at all. So we're getting the very small minority, or very small amount of students that go through, which is where I think SAL should be, because it is as a last resort to keep these students in school. They have the opportunity to go to PLAR afterwards as well, so there are other things that they can do when they go through there. But it's a last attempt to keep them in school.
Thank you.
Student Trustee Cadre?
Through you, Mr. Chair, how would a student's semester look between, for example, a student taking applied courses or academic courses and a student in SAL?
Through you, Chair, can you just pose the question again, please?
Yeah, sorry. How would a student's semester look in regards to courses? Like, for example, in regards to a student who's in applied or academic courses or essentials. So, like, I guess I'm trying to ask, would they still attend classes with other students, or would they be working in hubs or learning commons?
Great. Through you, Chair. So students, usually on SAL, they may attend the school and take 1, possibly 2 credits. And it wouldn't matter whether it's academic, applied, essentials level. They may attend for half the day, part of the day. The other part of the day, they may be having counseling. They may be at their work placement. And for some kids, it's actually they'll take online as well as do other activities with SAL. So it's each student, the SAL program is tailored for each student's specific interests and needs. And we try and make sure the best plan is made available to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is Summer Learning Program, Summer Semester. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Barrett and Superintendent Mills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's our pleasure to bring you an update on the board's summer learning and summer semester programs for 2018. Well, it's a coincidence. The last 2 days have felt like summer outside, so this is appropriate. The summer learning and summer semester programs support our student learners and are connected to the vision, we prepare all students for a successful life. Elementary summer learning supports students experiencing achievement gaps and other challenges that impact school success. And summer semester programs provide opportunities for grade 8 to 12 students to reach ahead in a variety of subject areas. And they also gain valuable experiential learning with the co-op programs we've run.
Thank you, Superintendent Mills. Through you, Mr. Chair. While we're presenting the summer learning program, I want to acknowledge the work of the folks who were leading the program for our elementary program this past year. That would be Principals Anne-Marie Bolbeck, Dominique Bertrand, Jen McMaster, and Vice Principal Claire Snyder. They certainly were the depth and supported the success of the program this past summer. So the Summer Learning Program is funded through the Council of Directors of Education, we refer to as CODE, and we're very fortunate provincially to receive this funding in order to be able to support our neediest learners. The program itself focuses on the development of literacy and numeracy skills, but it also provides experiences in, really fun things like robotics and physical literacy, arts, cultural activities, games, and includes guest speakers. So this past year, our summer program had 19 sites supporting 265 students from kindergarten to grade 5 with a focus on our K-3 students. It takes place over the course of 3 weeks for 4 hours per day, and we really have an opportunity here to negate what sometimes is referred to the summer slide for our neediest learners. Our program is connected to not only excellent education as provided by our teachers who are providing the program, but also the specifics with regards to how well are we supporting our learners. So as you can see, we have pre-assessments for our students, both in literacy and mathematics, and for our students this year, as indicated, much success in improving their reading scores. 78% of students 1 level, 48% of our students improved 2 levels, and then many improving over 4 to 6 levels. And a reminder, that's just within 3 weeks, 4 hours a day of that personalized instruction. New this year was extended funding specifically around supporting coding robotics, and that took the form of little creatures called B-bots that entered into our schools. The B-bots were very well received by our student learners, and it provided students with the opportunity to engage in critical thinking and problem solving and extension of both mathematics and literacy skills. The nice thing about this funding for any of the resources that we put in, both connected to literacy, numeracy, and robotics, is that we are able to leave those resources within the schools that we have the sites running in, and so that the schools can utilize those resources for all of our learners during the regular school year. As we know, it is imperative that our students' success is supported by our connection and collaboration with our parents, and we survey our parents to look at how well we supported learners' needs, and had lots of positive feedback from our parents this summer. 98% of our parent respondents felt that our children are enjoying the activities and also improving their skills. So we have students we've discussed and our parents we've discussed, but we also have that center point of our teachers who we have not only teaching the program, but we support their skill development through training prior to the beginning of the program. And it's an opportunity to provide precise supports around comprehensive literacy skills and skill-based around mathematics for our learners of those ages, and again surveyed our teachers to look at how we can be precise and supportive of improving the program. Also within the funding is support for our English as a second language learners. We ran 4 sites this past summer, comprising as well, similarly with the summer learning program, the 3 weeks and 4 hours per day, as well as a focus on literacy and oral language instruction. Students had lots of feedback for us. We seem to often hear about the joy of being with friends in a learning environment, and then the connection with the development of their skill set as well. So I'll turn it back over to Superintendent Mills.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Barrett. On to summer semester programs in 2018, just to expand on the intro. Like Superintendent Barrett, a big shout out to our staff at TR Leger School of Adult Alternative and Continuing Education, led by Principal Sandy McInnes, who led that group. A very successful summer. The programs are funded by the Ministry of Education, and that's not a misprint. 1,144 students with 1,243.5 credits earned this past summer. We offered 37 Reach Ahead online courses, and that's a good size staff there of a school, 31 staff, a principal, 4 coordinators that focus mainly on the e-learning with students who have questions or get off the track a little bit, 3 office staff, 9 co-op teachers, and 14 online markers. The courses were offered through the month of July, starting just after the long weekend. Students can log on anytime, so the Reach Ahead courses are grade 9 to 12, and I mentioned grade 8 in the intro. We do offer a learning strategies course for grade 8 students going into grade 9, and they get a jump start on their credits into high school. The co-op education runs a few weeks longer. Hours are determined by the work placement, and students can get a new credit, grade 11 and grade 12, attaching to grade 11 and grade 12, and earn 1 or 2 credits. And we once again offered the cadet co-op summer learning program in Ontario and in St. Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec, where cadets could get 2 credits as well. The promotion is mainly online through Facebook, school websites, Twitter. Certainly posters went out to schools, and schools were encouraged to promote it in their school newsletters. What we find is our guidance department is certainly promoting that as well, and I'll speak to that later. There's an example of all the courses we have offered, and there's the course codes there, which might not mean anything to you, but the headings are there in business and math and native studies, science, French, English, social science, HPE, health and phys ed, civics and careers, and Canada and world studies. So the total number of students, as I mentioned, was 1,144 with 1,243 credits. And to break it down further, in co-op, 122 students with 221 credits earned. You'll see it's been pretty steady throughout the last 4 to 5 years in co-op, with a little bit up, a little bit down. But just as a reminder, we continue to go through declining enrollment, so the number of students that we would have secondary age in 2014 compared to 2018 we'd have a lot less now. The cadet co-op program, you'll see there's a dip there in the numbers. I think we can take credit for bringing in the cadet co-op program. Other school boards have copied us. So there was some competition with the coterminous board, which was also offering it. So we would have students who were in the cadet program that would be in the Catholic system that would more likely than not take the courses through that. So that explains the drop in numbers there. You'll see, though, if you go from 2014 up to 2018, a significant increase in the number of credits earned, and a reminder that the number of students available to take courses in 2014 is a lot less than 2018. So it really is a bigger increase than the numbers show there. Just in terms of benefiting from co-op, the feedback from students is they can test drive a career, experience hands-on learning. We got some essential skills there, relevant classroom learning, valuable work experience. They earn credits towards their diploma and resilience and confidence. And it's during the summer months where they can get credits, but they also have time to maybe relax a little bit and focus on something they want, get maybe future employment for the rest of the summer in their communities. Feedback in terms of the e-learning, take advantage of peak time, maybe fill in a course they need, flexibility, work towards academic goals. It's not easy doing an e-learning course. You have to be an independent learner, and particularly in the summer, it can be 5 or 6 hours a day to do a course. I see the student trustee going, yes. Find when we're a school of many small high schools in rural area that we have to use all of these different programs to put together programs for students. And over the last 5 years, what we've learned as staff is not to tell the students what they need, or here you go. They're telling us what they want, and the numbers show that keep going up, that they're almost demanding summer semester and all the other programs that we're offering, and we keep putting it together for them. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On behalf of Superintendent Barrett and I, the summer semester and summer learning program is alive and well, and we'd entertain any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Thank you, through the chair. This may be not suited this presentation, but this whole program allows students to catch up academically. There's a small percentage of students that do not achieve their volunteer hours. Is there anything built into this, perhaps through the co-op program, that would allow them to recuperate those hours?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they'd be getting credit through co-op, so that can't be the volunteer hours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Thanks. Through you, Chair. How can we get the bebops in all of the schools, or more to the east? And I specifically asked that because my daughter right now is in university, and she has to take a data reading coding course, and it is trying. She's failing it terribly, and she just doesn't get the coding. And I was thinking these bebops would have been so helpful. And so there's really something to be said about those little guys, because that's really what she needs. And so I'm asking, how can we really, I don't even think we understand how much these kids really need this coding. It's really part of what we're going to be dealing with in the future with our kids. So, there you go.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for that question. So summer learning was an opportunity to access more of those particular robotics resources, but we do have a variety of different coding friends within the system. We would have things like Spheros and EV3s, and the resources are targeted for different particular age groups, as well as we have access to online programs that our teachers are using. What I think I hear you saying is the recognition of that skill set for our future graduates, and that certainly is something that is part of our curriculum in connection with those 21st century skills of problem solving and critical thinking, because it's mastering those elements, and sometimes we use different routes to get there, and coding would be one of those. But I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that focus. But certainly we recognize the necessity of that skill set for our future graduates.
It's a requirement. I have one more question.
Yes.
What's the funding you're talking about that's coming from the province for this? And is there, because you mentioned it's specific for what you're doing with this summer course, is that correct? Through you, Chair?
So through you, Chair, I can speak to the summer learning, the elementary component, and it is funded specifically through the Council of Directors of Education, that organization for that program. And then I believe Superintendent Mills was speaking to the Ministry of Education with regards to the summer semester.
Through you, Chair, the summer semester is fully funded by the Ministry of Education. The course, both the credit courses online and co-op.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee McAllister.
Thank you for this overview. I continue to be amazed every time I see it year after year. It seems to me that this is a hidden gem. My question, though, is with regard to students in grade 9, entering grade 9, who have to complete the blueprint. Is that what it's called?
My blueprint.
And is this promoted as part of their 4-year?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the grade 8 Reach Ahead credit is available to all secondary schools, even throughout the academic year now. We will be putting that out shortly through Tier Leisure, so schools would have the opportunity to offer the grade 8 Reach Ahead course learning strategies throughout the year before students even get to the to grade 9, and then we offer it in the summer. The promotion there that you see would be on Facebook, Twitter, through guidance counselors, and out of our 21 secondary schools, 19 are grade 7 to 12, so it would be well publicized there. And I know within the Smiths Falls family of schools area, as well as in Vankleek Hill, we would promote it through Pleasant Corners, as well as the feeder schools to SFDCI, Smiths Falls.
Thank you. Trustee Bill McPherson.
I'm going to feign ignorance here, but through the chair, can somebody explain to me exactly what a B-bot is? I've got one up on the screen, and it does seem a little bit juvenile, to be honest with you. And they're $123.
Through you, Chair. So as I had mentioned previously, BBOT is just one of the types of resources, but they're about this big. They light up. They have a little charging station. Maybe they look like a large mouse, perhaps. And they have the opportunity to code through a device, or actually to give the information directly on the device. And while it may look like it's a toy for a really young child, it actually provides lots of thinking processes that students all the way up to secondary can have fun with.
Okay, thank you.
Student Trustee Codger.
Through you, Chair. I just have to make a quick comment of gratitude. I've heard many students who really appreciate the summer semester course in high school. They find it incredibly successful, and it allows them to reach ahead in their credits to, as mentioned previously, open up their timetables for co-ops and more hands-on learning. So as the graph shows, the numbers are growing, and I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to grow. As well, on the BBOT topic, many communities across UCDSB have not robots similar to BBots, and they are, the amount of interest students show in these are absolutely incredible. They learn how to code through them, and I've seen the success not only in Brockville but in other communities as well. So just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? It's nice to see summer school taking on a whole different meaning than when my parents used to threaten to send me there. It's nice. Thank you. Threatened. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to the next item is an action item, and this is going to be a request to amend the board bylaws. To begin with, before I turn it over to Trustee Cram, I need a motion on the floor to begin the discussion with this.
A point of order, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
In order for us to amend any bylaws, we require a notice of motion. Our bylaws stipulated.
Trustee Cram?
The only response I would say to that is it's coming out of referral from the meeting on May 23rd to bring it back on October the 10th.
We have to follow the bylaws, so what do the bylaws say on this?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, there are two sections that are relevant. 1.15, which is about amendments to bylaws. And it states that these bylaws may be amended at any regular meeting or special meeting of the board by a 2/3 vote of the membership present at such a meeting entitled to vote, provided that such an amendment has been presented as a notice of motion at the previous regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. And then secondly, Mr. Chair, I believe it's item 515, which was about, no, I think that's, is there,
That's the only
just
part?
1.15.
Okay, that certainly is an oversight on my part. There needs to be a motion brought forward, or notice of a motion. Okay, so that we won't be discussing this tonight. But we need a notice of a motion brought forward for the next board meeting if we're going to proceed, correct?
Correct.
So do I get a notice of motion from here?
Well, Mr. Chair, that notice can be brought forward up till 6 hours before the next meeting, right?
That's fine. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Whenever this was discussed, was there not a motion put on the floor back whenever this was opened up? When we were to review the bylaws and bring recommendation back to the board?
That was
Back in
April.
April, we started this?
May, the 12th, it's May.
Are you familiar with that?
Checking, Mr. Chair.
Based on a strict interpretation of the bylaws, though, regardless of what motions were brought forward prior, we have to provide notice of motion at the previous meeting.
So with that thinking,
The motion should come tonight.
the motion needs to come tonight. It can't come in advance. It needs to be brought on the floor tonight as a motion to bring a notice of motion for the next board meeting. Okay.
When do you want to entertain that motion?
We could entertain it now.
Notice of
And?
motion in the bylaws? for the next
Pardon me?
meeting?
You're bringing a notice of motion for the next board meeting?
Correct.
Yes.
So you can't add to the agenda tonight that it's a notice of motion, so it has to be brought forward at the next regular scheduled meeting as a notice of motion, because the intent is you have to give people an opportunity to respond.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay. So we're not going to go forward with this. Trustee McAllister?
Chair, you may rule me out of order, but I would like to make a motion, since we are talking about bylaws.
Well, we're
the
not.
bylaws of the board.
Technically, they're not on the floor right now.
I beg your pardon?
Technically, they're not on the floor right now because we can't be talking about them because the motion hasn't been brought forward.
I would suggest that it is a related topic.
It would be if this was on the floor. It's not on the floor.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we know what we need to do. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the next is the report from OPSPA. I'll turn this over to OPSPA Director McDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. There is a printed report of the summary of the meeting from OPSPA last weekend. Of particular note, though, I wanted to just highlight a couple of things. One, we had a presentation from 3 members of OSTA ACO. Those members were from Niagara School Board, Peel, and Renfrew. Those individuals were present to kind of give the board of directors of OPSPA an oversight as to what OSTA ACO is, and to some degree ease some concerns. I think a number of us around the table would say, you know, who supervises them, who does what, whenever they meet as a group. The young lady who is the president gave a very compelling overview of what happens when individuals are meeting as OSTA ACO, and the requirements that if you don't check in, you're going to get checked out. So it's very strict. They do have alumni who are there for all of their meetings as well, so they would help supervise that aspect. The presentation is there as well for you to review, and certainly it was a great opportunity to listen to our student trustees present on behalf of the work that they do. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is around, we all know that some of the regulations are in place from the previous government, but we're not quite certain where they are. But one of the things I did want to bring up is the report that was provided by EY, Ernst & Young, was sent out to the government. It was there's a link in your document from September 25th, Managing Transformation, a Modernization Action Plan for Ontario. So this is the detailed line by line that the government had undertaken to review and to set the stage for what they were going to do moving forward. Have a read through it at some point. I think it's an opportunity for us as a board to discuss this, to see how we would like to respond locally. And I mean by responding, prepare ourselves for what might come, and or provide some insight as to areas where we can make adjustments. I think the area that's concerning that they try to highlight is that 90% of the total operating expenditure is spent through transfer payments agreements. And we, as education, fall within that. So the report and the government really believe that there's an opportunity to find some efficiencies through those transfer payments, and that they'll get a bigger bang for their buck by tackling that. That doesn't specifically mean that they're going to cut education, but I think it will be very lean for some time to come. I don't think it'll be a situation where funds will flow as easily as they did in the past. And I think there's an opportunity for us to sit back and to provide some insight potentially to OPSPA and to our ministry and to our NPP colleagues about areas where they may find some efficiencies and give them some wins, but an opportunity for us to still maintain some level of current funding that we have. I don't think that we will have a lot of areas that we can provide to them where we get a lot of extra money, but there's perhaps some areas that we can provide some insight into them. It's as I said, a very detailed report. It's about 50 pages. It doesn't specifically target any particular area, but certainly does give set the stage for what may come. There will be a number of new pieces of information that will come out from OPSPA over the coming weeks. It was fast and furious over the summer from the government, so OPSPA staff have been very diligent in making sure that they keep up to date with all the work that they're doing, and providing us some insight. We did hear from some boards there, and it comes from the call the word pay management system or a management finance system. Some boards were being tasked with dipping into their reserves, their surpluses, to manage some things. So there's some documentation that came out last spring and even this fall within the B and SB memos that will dictate and operate how boards are intended to operate within those surpluses if they have them, and move forward. And we heard of some boards that have substantial surpluses. So that's just some areas that are on the horizon, and certainly open to any questions if there are any, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing there are none, thank you very much for that report. Moving on, Director, do you have any comments?
Just one, Mr. Chair. I want to remind our district and trustees that coming out of the board's survey, a culture survey a few years back, was confirming that we're taking time to acknowledge our employees and the great work that they do. That's also part of the director's work plan from this past year in response to the board's own work plan and will be again a feature this year. We just put out word this week about the Directors Awards of Merit, and so we'd encourage you to speak to parents and to schools about if they know of an employee that meets the criteria of the Award of Merit, that they would think about submitting an application before early November, so that the senior team can take a look at the applications that we receive and identify our next round of recipients for this important recognition. So we're pleased that that's back with us again for another year, and we certainly credit the board for supporting the staff to go forward with this kind of form of recognition, which is also complements the other types of recognition that we have, for example, the Trustee Innovation Awards. And we look forward to bringing forward to the board in early November who we believe those recipients will be for the fall awards.
Thank you, Director. I do not have much I want to say. I do want to make one announcement that at the last Steel Board meeting that we had, that Trustee McAllister was elected as the Chair of Steel Board of Directors, and so congratulations on that.
I'm not sure.
Oh, boy.
You can take it how you want to take it, but but I just wanted everyone to know that. Okay, so I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole October the 10th, 2018 at 8:10, moved by Trustee Wendy McPherson, seconded by Trustee Bill McPherson. Can I just get a show of hands for that? Well, actually, we have a vote up, do we? Want to do it just for the, let's do it for the practice of it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And Trustee Cram, I assume you're in favor? Yeah. Thank you very much. And I need a motion that the Committee of the Whole move into private session October 10, 2018, moved by Trustee Wendy McPherson, seconded by Trustee Richards. And again, we'll ask you to cast your votes, please.
I'm already in the private.